right, ladies and gentlemen, final part of the John Titor story that I've got in my email. This was part of Pamela's personal instant messaging chat conversations with John Titor, aka John Titor. I don't know if she gave this to me or I found this on the internet, but just so you know, I don't know if I mentioned this. When I first discovered this story, and some time went by, I went back and read it. A year or two went by, I went back and read it, and as I started to already see things like, okay, man, this guy's starting to make a lot of sense right now. I decided to try to find out who is this Pamela girl, because she had private instant message conversations with this guy, and I'm starting to really wonder now. So I tried to find her, and I was able to years ago get in contact with her. I think I found one of the message boards she was a regular at. Lo and behold, a few people said, "Oh yeah, that's her. We know. Yeah, she's the one." And she talked to me. I can't remember if I did it through email or on the phone. To tell you the truth, man, I think it was email. To tell you the truth, actually, I think it was email. But I just kind of asked a few questions, and again, this is way many years later. And asked her, does she still think it was real and stuff? And she's like, I really don't know. She still, I guess, was on the fence. And I kind of tried to pry. Was there any additional information that's relevant now that maybe you can tell us, or anything that maybe you were holding back? And she was like, no, it was all in the stuff I released on the internet and stuff. So I've got copies of her instant message conversation. Not a whole lot here. But there is an interesting part that I'm including in here when John Titor first allegedly came on the scene, which was 1998, and sent some faxes. I think it was to the Art Bell Coast to Coast radio show. So let me go ahead. This isn't going to be a long one. This for sure. This is the final video. So this conversation was between a guy named Joe. No, it's not me. I'll tell you the truth, I wish it was me. A guy named Joe, Pamela, and John Titor, a little three-way instant message. Joe asked Titor, could you explain a bit more about having the two opportunities to leave? Because he said there was two opportunities where the gravitational whatever around the Earth, the sun, the moon, whatever, was perfect on Earth for him to leave so that he can go back to his timeline, his world line. And the reason being is that the unit, when he gets here at the proper time and he is, goes back into time, and let's say in this case 1998 from the year 2036, as soon as he gets here, the machine takes a, as he said, snapshot of the gravity. So it has to find out later, whenever he wants to leave, when's the next time that gravity is going to be very similar to when I got here, because it has to be in order for him to make it back appropriately to a world line that was basically just like when he left, which is interesting because he also said, even though he left his world line to come to our world line and then go back, technically speaking, he's not going back to his own world line. It will also be slightly different. But again, if you get the gravity snapshot so close to perfect or whatever, it doesn't matter, and it's basically, for all intents and purposes, the same world line. So he asked, could you explain a bit more about having the two opportunities to leave? And Titor says, sure. The VGL system is very sensitive. Upon arrival, it takes a snapshot of the local gravity. Based on time on station, it calculates the best times to leave from tidal forces such as the moon and sun. It has a rather large effect on the chances of hitting the right departure window. So Joe asked, high tide and low tide can affect it? Titor says, yes, the position of the sun and moon affect the local gravity. The moon mostly, he says. And Pam says, well, how? And he says, have you ever been to the ocean and seen the tides rise and fall? And Joe says, okay, I have to rethink my definition of local. Pam says, yes, replying, I have seen the tides rise and fall. So Titor says, it's the same kind of effect. Pam says, here's a question. If you had it in the front seat and operated it in the back seat, why would you put it in the front seat? And he says, my father had to help me get it out of there. I was waiting for someone to ask that. And Pam laughs. Titor says, there's just enough room to fit it behind the seats in that car. Joe asks, have you even seen the inside of the unit? And he says, oh yes. It's rather odd, actually. Pam says, what do you cool the singularity with? And John says, it's the same. Well, first of all, he says, because it's kind of double answers here, so let me explain which one he's answering. Have you seen the inside of the unit? Yes, I have. It's the same feeling you get looking at a bomb. Pam says, what do you cool the singularity with? He says, that's a secret. Can't talk about that. But suffice to say, it is very clever. Joe asked, is the size of the singularity housing about the size of a softball? And Titor says there's quite a few layers to the housing unit. The absolute inner layer that is still physical is about the size of a grapefruit. So Pam says something, a chemical. What do you cool the singularity with? A chemical or a field? She says that means there must be some parts that are not physical. Joe says that's what I thought. I got an image of what it might look like. Titor says the singularity itself does not touch anything. Pam says, is it suspended in a gravitational field? Titor says any matter floating around in there would be absorbed and converted instantly into X-rays. To answer her question, if it's a gravitational field, he says it's magnetic. The singularity is charged before it is captured. That is how the second event horizon is formed. Positive topspin. He says, I'll be right back. Small break. All right, I'm back. No, the singularities themselves do not move in relation to each other. The gravity fields they create are combined and twisted. That part gets a little dicey for me, but it does work. Joe asks, but they each will have their own properties. Is that right? Titor says, yes. The gravity between the singularity and the event horizons have different properties. They are controlled by overlapping and varying the energy between them. Joe asks, and those properties can be changed to what you need them to be? And Titor says, yes, it is actually quite simple. It's the math that is challenging. There's a great deal of chemical use to clean up the water and soil. There are still some areas we just can't get into yet. Joe asks, chemicals to reduce radiation? And he says, no, radiation isn't a big problem. It's the chemicals created by the fallout. And Pam says, biological? Titor says, iodine, phosphorus, strontium, stuff like that. So Joe says, oh, mutations. He says, yes. Oh, okay, I got it. Titor says, many of the nukes were rather clean. It's the after effect, what happens after they go off. Again, those other chemicals that cause the problem. Major biological problems cleared themselves up after about 10 years. Now, this is an Art Bell fax from 1998. Art Bell reads this received fax on the air in 1998. This is the first fax. I think there was 2 faxes. First fax. Dear Art, I had to fax when I heard other time travelers calling in from any time past the year 2500 AD. Please let me explain. Time travel was invented in 2034. Offshoots of certain successful fusion reactor research allowed scientists at CERN, CERN, the one that made the Large Particle Collider in like 2006, or I think it finally went live in 2008. Here he is mentioning them by name, CERN, in 1998. Okay, nobody knew what CERN was or had even an idea that they're going to build this thing and what its real purpose was going to be until way later. So I want to throw that out there. Offshoots of certain successful fusion reactor research allowed scientists at CERN, CERN, to produce the world's first contained singularity engine. The basic design involves rotating singularities inside a magnetic field. By altering the speed and direction of rotation, you can travel both forward and backward in time. Time itself can be understood in terms of connected lines. When you go back in time, you travel on your original timeline. When you turn the singularity engine off, a new timeline is created due to the fact that you and your time machine are now there. In other words, a new universe is created. To get back to your original line, you must travel a split second further back and immediately throw the engine into forward without turning it off. Some interesting outcomes of this are: you meet yourself I have done it often and taken a younger version of myself along for a few rides before returning myself to the new timeline and going back in time, or going back to mine, his world line. You can alter history in the new universe that you have just created. Most of the time, the changes are subtle. The oldest one was a skyscraper that don't exist in New York. 1998. What could he be talking about? Oh, 2001, September 11th. Ooh, interesting. Interestingly, when you travel in time, you must compensate for the orbit of the Earth. Since the time machine doesn't move, you have to adjust the engine so you remain on the planet when you turn it off. Now for the future you might want to know about. Y2K is a disaster. And keep in mind, from the other parts, he alleged that he got involved so that we would not have to experience the Y2K disaster as he did on his world line. I just want to cut in there for that. Y2K is a disaster. Many people die on the highways when they freeze to death trying to get to warmer weather. The government tries to keep power by instituting martial law, but all of it collapses when their efforts to bring the power back up fail. A few years later, communal government system is developed after the Constitution takes a few twists. China retakes Taiwan, Israel wins the largest battle for their life, and Russia is covered in nuclear snow from their collapsed reactors. Second facts to Art Bell. And don't have a time frame for this. July 29th, 1998. Dear Mr. Bell, I'm glad you're back. I faxed this information to you the day before you left the air. I wanted to make sure it wasn't lost in the shuffle, so I'm sending a gift. If you've already seen this, please accept my apologies. If you choose to make this public, please do not publish the fax number. I had to fax when I heard the other time traveler calling in from the recent time past, in fact, the year 2500 AD. Let me explain. Mr. Bell, I sent the fax with this opening. Okay, he's just reminding him, this is the letter I sent you, and he just reread what he sent the original fax. As I said, I am a time traveler. I've been on this world line since April of this year, and I plan to leave soon. Typically, time travelers do not purposely affect the world lines they visit. However, this mission is unusually long, and I've grown attached to some of the people I've met here. Anyway, for my own reasons, I've decided to help this world line by sharing information about the future with a few people in the hope that it will help their future. I am contacting you for the same reason. Unfortunately, there is no historical references to your program in my world line, so there's no Art Bell show on his world line. I believe you can change your future by creating one now. Some of the information presented on your program may be invaluable to upline researchers. I suggest you isolate the programs that concentrate on military technology and new physics theories. Transcribe these programs and put them someplace safe away from the box. I recommend someplace in the Midwest. I also urge you to reconsider your paranoia to the Russians. They are not preparing for war with the average U.S. citizen. They are preparing for war with the U.S. government. They will eventually save this country and the lives of millions of Americans. I realize my claims are a bit difficult to accept, so I will send the following once I know you have received the facts. A few pages from the operator's manual of my time machine, and a few colored photographs of my vehicle. If you wish to contact me, I will be happy to share with you the nature of time, the physics of time travel, and some of the events of your future. Please send a return package to, and he leaves that blank. So he left 5 pictures. I was looking through my emails and all the files and stuff that I sent myself to see if I had some pictures of that stuff somewhere. And if you'll just hang on, I don't know if I have. I remember seeing the pictures. The most interesting picture to me that I remember, I don't have it in front of me, was him in his car with the unit turned on, and he has a laser pen in his hand, and I think he had either a cigar or some kind of way to get smoke in the car, so you could see the laser. Obviously, you can see the line of the laser, because without smoke you can't see that. This is, everybody knows this. And he does it, and you see a laser, which should be a straight shot, in his car, do this in curves. Again, this is a long time ago. Sure, things could be manipulated, whatever, but back then, as far as, effects technology on computers and that kind of thing, for just the average person, again, someone who would just make a story up like this to be able to do. I mean, you could look at the photo. People have zoomed in on it to try to look to see that he, make this with Photoshop, look for pixelation, and no one has ever really found anything. Again, it's been a really, really long time. I don't have the pictures. I can't believe I don't have the pictures. But if you want to, look on the internet. Just type in John Titor laser light or something like that. Laser. John Titor laser, something like that. And I'm sure the picture has to exist somewhere. I'm quite certain. And you'll see it. There's a few other pictures. He shows the actual unit itself, what it looks like. Let's see. Pamela says to the board members, please don't send any more messages for John. He's went home. John requested to please not harass anyone who is unlucky enough to have the name John Titor, because it will not be him. Let's see. There's more I want to read here. Pamela says, I decided to read a couple of John letters or whatever. Dear, and this is a letter from Titor to her. Dear Pamela, I saw your email this morning. Because basically she says, I decided to share a couple of John letter on the board. Actually, going through his letters made me kind of sad. Part of me believes his story and part of me doesn't. I don't know why I have such feelings for him. It's like I knew him even when I first met him. You'd be surprised that I asked John directly to tell me as his friend. Personally, not on the web, are you really a time traveler or not? Please be honest with me. That's what she said to him. And his reply was, Dear Pamela, I saw your email this morning and debated about it for quite a while. It had occurred to me that perhaps it would be best for everyone and safer for my family to just tell you I'm lying. Since I don't feel your skills at interpreting reality are flawed, I don't think that will help any. If he says it's fake, it's too late. He doesn't think she'll buy it. One thing I am hoping to convey on the message board is the philosophical concept that once man is able to travel in time, there is no more absolute truth. Now, if you're struggling with that, let me explain. As he said, for every good thing, there is a bad thing. For every reaction, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Right? We know that's in physics. But what he is saying, world lines, as far as world lines are concerned, for every decision you may have done on this world line, there is another world line in the infinite numbers of world lines where you did the exact opposite. You're a real nice guy, a real nice girl here. There's a world line where you are an absolute prick. There's a world line where you're the time traveler and he's the one on the message board, right? This is what he said. So what that means is once you can time travel, there's no more absolute truth, because what might be truthful on this world line could be slightly different on another world line or majorly different on another world line. That's why he said that. Disregarding the probability of the following examples, consider these possibilities. If I were to tell you I was lying, it's possible that everything I have told you will come to pass anyways, and your outlook on the unfolding events would be biased and jaded based on your anger towards a man, him, who made up a story on the internet. I could also tell you that what I've said is the absolute truth. After that, it's possible my family and I could die in a traffic accident the next day, and the me here in this world line wouldn't be around in your future anyways, because he would have died here. Never base your actions and decisions on the portrayal of truth from one source of information. The reason I told you it doesn't matter is because I don't want you to totally believe me. Anything else would be unhealthy for both of us, and your skills at skepticism will save your life. And she says the rest of the email has been deleted. She's not going to share that part. Let me just see if there's anything else here. Dear John's last letter to me. Dear Pamela, no, I am not an April Fool's prank. As you read this, I will most likely be making final preparations to leave, and I will be gone by deleted such and such date. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a true friend who will not be forgotten. I took a quick look at the site, and I'm not really that surprised at the squabble. First off, that is not my real name, so please direct the members not to harass anyone who is unlucky enough to have it. Second, I am flattered that my words are being dissected so carefully, but I can already see that they are applying their own standards and thoughts to what was said. Please remind them that people in different times do not think the same way they do, and a culture's maturity is determined by how far it can plan into the future. I also think it would be quite interesting if someone would contact Frank Tipler. He's one of these theorists, the Tipler theory or something. I wish I could be here to see his response. It should be quite historic. Possibly because the tools needed to make this time machine were based off of Tipler's theories, or some of his theories anyways. My father will videotape the departure, but I can already see it will be quite emotional for both of my parents. They are aware I want it sent to you, but they also understand it will be seen as a novelty. I understand and respect how difficult it will be to subject the object of their feelings to public scrutiny, so please be patient with them. Please send your address one more time so the 5110 label can be sent to you. Thanks again, Pamela. John. To this date, there's not been any video departure of him leaving one way or the other. And I cannot remember off the top of my head. Now that I'm reading that, it's reminding me. I wish I would have checked something else before I did this video. But I remember hearing on the Coast to Coast AM show 3-4 years ago, maybe sooner than that, more recent than that. They had the lawyer out of Orlando who represented them when he was here, when Titor was here. They had his family here had the lawyer do some things, partially or mostly due to what John Titor, when he came back from 2036, comes back here, quickly convinces his parents, hey, I'm that little 2-year-old right there. That's me. Actually, he was just being born in 1998. So, anyways, the lawyer calls in to the Coast to Coast 80 AM radio show with Titor's mom, here on This World line, and she said, I don't want my voice, I don't want anything, so all that he's going to do is be the middleman. So the lawyer says, you guys can ask questions or whatever you want. I will relay the question to her, and then she'll tell me on my cell phone, on this hand, what the answer is, and then on the regular phone, I'll reply. It's out there somewhere on YouTube, I'm positive, but I did hear it back when it happened. It was very interesting. And I remember, of all the things, I know that the lawyer was hired. John advised his parents, we have to do such and such. We need a lawyer to do this. So they didn't discuss really what it was, if I recall. But that's how the lawyer came in the picture. But they decided to answer some questions. And the mom, one of the questions was, how did you know that this guy, if you're just having this baby and it's him, the baby obviously can't talk yet or nothing, you just had him, this guy coming from the future who says, oh, I'm your son, and he's 30 years old or whatever, how does all of a sudden he prove that he's, like, how do you believe him? And the mom said, well, between me and my husband, it was two different ways to prove to us, and they were totally different. She said, for me, it was very weird, but it was, there's something about a mother's child that the mother knows, connects, feels, and I knew it was him. My husband, on the other hand, she says, was not convinced at all. And John Titor had to give him something that was just absolutely No one in the world would know this. It's impossible. And maybe been more than one thing. And she said, even to this day, even all this whole way, and he proved beyond a doubt that was the case. He said, my husband still questions and still wonders, but they did move to Nebraska. So they used to live in Orlando, okay? They did, in fact, move. Nobody knows their real name, her first name or last name, maybe the first name, I'm not sure, but no one knows her. No one knows where they are in Nebraska. But again, Nebraska becomes the new capital. Omaha becomes the new capital, according to Titor. So it's a very fascinating, interesting story. And this really concludes it. So as I've said from the very beginning, the story's always been in the back of my mind. It's hard to really say I believe in this thing 100%. And then when you kind of forget about it and you see stuff happening in this world, and then it hits you, oh my gosh, John Titor talked about that. This thing that's happening now that sounds absolutely preposterous, he talked about in 1998, 1999, mainly 2000, 2001. That's really when he was on the message boards. So that's it. That's all I got for you on this one. The final conclusion of the John Titor story. Take care.